Welcome back, Defenders. This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 65, our Captain America spoiler-filled podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hi, I am one of your other hosts, John. Good to have you on board if you're following us live now on YouTube. And of course, this episode will be also put up as a podcast. You can find that at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, or you can go to any other Team Cap, Team Iron Man podcast catcher. Just search Defenders TV Podcast. And you can subscribe there, leave a review, and follow and listen to the podcast all about Defenders TV Podcast, looking at both the MCU Marvel films, such as this one, or the Marvel Netflix, as you can see here, shows with Luke Cage starting this September.
Absolutely, yeah. But this time we are here for probably the biggest Marvel movie of the year with Captain America Civil War. One of the big things, obviously, I don't know how many times I can say it throughout the podcast. I think when we talked to Chris, our other co-host, who can't unfortunately be here for this podcast, he specifically said that for the first 20 minutes of the podcast, he'd just be shouting spoilers. So I've written it at the bottom of the screen. Underneath our names, Derek and John, saying spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, and we understand obviously the movie isn't out in the US until tomorrow with some previews today, stop watching, come back after you've watched it, and hopefully you'll enjoy our thoughts about the movie.
Definitely, this is spoiler filled, not spoiler free.
Absolutely,
spoiler filled. So forewarning is forearmed against all eventualities. So if you haven't seen it yet, definitely look away now, switch off now, and come back for another time to listen to our thoughts and discussions on Captain America Civil War. Yes. Remember, our usual way of doing all of this is 5 discussion points: the good, the bad, and or the indifference, depending on how we feel about the film. And then we defend or not that episode, or in this case, the movie Captain America Civil War.
Absolutely, yeah. But we're going to change this up slightly to begin with. We normally ask kind of a general overview of the movie that we're covering, or the TV show that we're covering. This time, I want to start it out with a kind of the big question for everybody going in. This movie is based on the huge comic book event Civil War, where you're asked, which side are you on? You can see behind us, you can see one of the Civil War comic books. It's all about choose your side. Which side are you on? Lots of hashtagging of Team Cap and Team Iron Man. John, to kick us off, which side were you on before you went in, and did that change after you watched the film?
You see, I am a sit on the fence kind of a person, really. Okay. I was ultimately I think a Team Iron Man to begin with.
Right.
My head says Team Iron Man. I am a regulator, so I kind of thought, the Sokovia Accords, the need to make these superheroes accountable, that kind of rhymes with me, absolutely. But there is something in my heart that also says Team Cap, Team Steve Rogers, completely. I do think it is one of those things that kind of sways a bit. Sometimes you do feel in the film, for me, that Captain America is a tad arrogant. I mean, he has every right to be. Right. He's saved the world countless times. He definitely is doing it in his eyes for all the right reasons. Absolutely. And he distrusts the government. But and that made me kind of sway towards Iron Man as well, really. But certainly I would actually be going for a different type of a team here.
Oh, really? Interesting.
A Team Romanov, I think.
Right. Very good. We'll get into that, I suppose, a little bit later on when we get into our points. For me, from the comic books,
Hail Hydra,
absolutely. For me, from a spoiler-free podcast, I mentioned, particularly when Chris asked that question of us, I specifically said that you'll have some interesting opinions coming out of this film. Throughout the comic book run, the 120 issues or so that I read of the Civil War arcs and the connected comic books, I was always on the side of Team Cap. You're talking superhero comic books here. How can you tell them they have to go along with the normal government and normal way of doing things? What if the government are corrupt? What if the cops are corrupt? Why are these superheroes not allowed to take them on? And that's absolutely how I went into this film. I'm Team Cap for life, Team Cap forever. But they made a great argument for Iron Man. If you delve into it, from here on, I'm telling you, we are going to go right into deep spoilers. So from the beginning of the movie, you kind of go, right, okay, there's an accident here that happens in the attack with Rumlow, with Crossbones. There's an accident here that happens where Scarlet Witch kills quite a lot of people by mistake, right at the beginning of the film. This is what leads to, and I think we spoke about it on many of our podcasts, from our Daredevil podcast or Age of Ultron podcast, what are the things that are going to cause the Civil War enactment, the enactment of the Sokovia Accords. Sokovia?
It is Sokovia,
Thank you. What is it? And it turns out to be everything. It turns out to be the helicarriers over Washington, the attack by the Chitauri in New York, obviously Sokovia dropping an entire city on top of hundreds of thousands of people potentially. They didn't clear the area below. They did clear off the people from Sokovia. And in this, what we find out is that Scarlet Witch has killed quite a lot of dignitaries from Wakanda. So some really good positive reasons.
Well, they're relief workers, aren't they?
That's right, yeah.
And it's not just Lagos there where that accident happens. It is New York. It is Sokovia, and
and Washington.
Completely, it is Washington as well. And it is all to do with just killing loads of innocent bystanders. Okay, they're trying to save everyone as much as they can, but it's almost impossible to do that. I mean, if you bring down one of those huge Chitauri things, the beasts that went through through space and came through and are floating around the skyscrapers of New York, when you bring one of those down, that's going to potentially cause collateral damage. Yeah,
certainly. So love the idea, love the incident that happens, and love that it's being brought out the way it is. For Tony being brought into it, obviously it's by the individual who comes up to him and says that her son was killed, and he's the one that murdered them. What are they going to do about it? That's what brings Tony on the opposite side to Cap, and what pushes Cap to the opposite side. Really, he was going to sign the accord at one point in the film. He is going to sign it, but what brings him on the other side is that everybody wants to take out the Winter Soldier, wants to take out his best friend Bucky. And that kind of puts it in a real personal side for him. And I totally understand his argument. I think they do a great job in this film of setting up the two arguments. While you may come out as Team Iron Man at the end and think that Cap, as you mentioned, was a bit arrogant at times, if you delve into Cap's storyline, you realize actually he's trying to protect a person that's been brainwashed, forced to do things against his will for over 50 years. And he's trying to protect that side of things. How can you make that a black and white issue is kind of Cap's idea, which is a bit stronger than in the comic books.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think as well it goes beyond that. Cap is trying to save one person. Team Iron Man, he's trying to save all innocent people.
Right.
And actually, as we go through the podcast, there is the notion of being framed for the Winter Soldier for certain activities and terrorist activities in this film.
Yeah.
So that ultimately, Team Iron Man would be on the side of Winter Soldier once he has that evidence and that information.
Yeah.
I think with Team Cap, it is just way too personal. And I think that blurs his perspective. It makes him as well seem slightly selfish, maybe, because he is looking out for him and his friend. I think Team Iron Man, he's maybe the social democracy of it going on, where he's looking after all the innocents,
right?
The ordinary person, not the superhero or supervillain or super in between, like the Winter Soldier, quite frankly, is. He's looking after the guy who was there in Sokovia, or should have been looking after the guy in Sokovia on a relief sort of voluntary service overseas, who's then killed by essentially this huge chunk of rock falling down on him.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't see any of that in Age of Ultron, but the point is that Iron Man is confronted by his mum, and it's that personal story, that personal responsibility that he then feels. And that, to me, is why I would be Team Iron Man. But it gets slightly more complicated than that, and I think we'll talk about that as we move into the 5 discussion points.
Absolutely. I don't think we're going to settle our hashtag Team Cap or hashtag Team Iron Man discussion just now. Maybe we'll come back to it at the end of our podcast. Maybe we'll have different opinions at the end. As John mentioned up front, we do cover our podcasts and any of our episodes with our top 5 points. Could be good, could be bad, could be somewhere in between. But what we're going to do is go into who it is that wrote and directed the movie first, and then John will take us on to a synopsis. So this movie, once again, was directed by the wonderful Anthony Russo and Joe Russo, who directed the last Captain America Winter Soldier film, and are going to be going on to direct Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really excited to see
I hope they can really change my mind on Thanos.
Absolutely.
I reckon they could do.
I think so.
Absolutely. So I'm slightly looking forward to it a bit more than I was.
Yeah, one of the things I'll definitely call out right up front here, the direction and writing in this film really does take account of all of the characters. It gives them all something to do, which I think is going to be really necessary in the Infinity War films, which may have their name changed, we heard today. They could have their name changed to something else, but they are the next 2 Avengers movies going to be directed by the Russos. The movie was written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. Fans or listeners of our show will probably know those names because we mentioned them many, many times during our podcast about Agent Carter season 1 and 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're the creators of Agent Carter. They were involved in all 3 films so far, from the Civil War side, from the Captain America side, the first Avenger, Winter Soldier, and obviously currently Civil War. So they do have a huge amount of, I suppose, bias in a way, but a huge amount of involvement in the character and creation of Captain America, as we've seen him so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Absolutely. And whilst we're talking about Peggy Carter, I think we should say renew Agent Carter.
Absolutely.
Loved the 2 seasons that we've had so far. Amazing that was born out of Captain America, the First Avenger. Really, really good show. Very different type of Marvel show. Complementary as well, I think. And really to have that range of different types of shows within the Marvel TV universe, as well as then complementing the cinematic universe.
Absolutely, and not to take away from Tara Butters and Michelle Fazekas, who were the showrunners for Agent Carter. Feely and Marcus were the creators of the character and kind of handed it over to the 2 wonderful showrunners to set up those 2 seasons. But John, do you want to tell us what McFeely and Marcus gave us for this particular movie?
I sure will. After the chaos and loss of New York and the Chitauri, and then Sokovia and Ultron, a new incident in Lagos calls into question the role of the Avengers and their place in the world. The international community, led by the country of Wakanda, begin to finalize new rules of engagement for the Avengers, the Sokovia Accords, that look to monitor and control the Avengers and the increasing number of superhumans. But this new treaty only spreads discord among the Avengers. Tony Stark supports oversight, while Steve Rogers, distrustful of the government's motives, seeks to remain free to act as the team deemed necessary. However, as tensions rise between the Avengers, a new and personal perspective comes into play for Captain America that only hardens his resolve against the Accords. As new companions are asked to fight and join opposing sides, an unknown enemy lurks in the shadows, intent on revealing a disturbing legacy from the Soviet era that looks set to cause civil war.
Nice. Good job, John. Good job boiling that down into a reasonably spoiler-free piece. I think I could probably use that on our website when we put
notes. I try my best.
Absolutely. And by the way, our little blue line above our Defenders TV podcast is no indication that we're a Captain America supporter completely. I
have only just noticed that, and quite frankly, it should be red.
I couldn't get a blue and red one, so
not only is it Team Captain America, but it is also Team Everton FC, which is even worse.
Lovely. And this is obviously just for our UK listeners, so most people will get that as well. Well done.
Or it could be Leicester City. You know, at the end of the day, they've just won the Premiership.
That is true. But anyway,
congratulations. By
enough of football.
Absolutely.
That's the first football conversation.
2 teams waging war in an epic battle for a 0-0 draw.
Absolutely. You know? This is probably the first and longest football conversation we've had in 65 episodes of our podcast.
Yeah, ever.
Absolutely. But I'm going to kick off with my first point because it really does take off right from the beginning of the movie. The big question for a lot of people coming into this is this going to be Avengers 2.5 or is this going to be a Captain America movie? I want to say straight off the bat, this is a Captain America movie. We did end Age of Ultron with the creation of the new Avengers led by Captain America, obviously featuring Scarlet Witch, featuring War Machine, all of the team there at the end of the movie with Falcon as well. I'm trying to think, there was one other person, Vision, of course, where he was leading the team. They are going on the attack and on the offensive in Lagos at the start of this movie in South Africa. And they are chasing down. The reason why they're going on the offensive is they're chasing down Brock Rumlow, who is alive after the building collapsed on him in Civil War.
On his face, no less.
Absolutely awesome, but burnt to a crisp. We did see him alive at the end of the last Captain America movie. He is a well-known character within the Captain America comic books for a specific reason that I don't really want to spoil for anybody. But this
is a spoiler.
I know, but for a specific reason in the comic books that I don't want to spoil. But I would say go out and read the Civil War arc and the something of Captain America arc that follows Civil War. There you go. But Crossbones is the main character that features in those books, kind of one of the main villains that features in those books, and that is what we see in Brock Rumlow. That's quite difficult to say. But what I have to say is I love his costume in this. He gets a proper costume with the skull on his face.
That was cool.
Showing exactly that he is this villain Crossbones. The opening scene I thought was fantastic. The fight sequences were really good. The one thing I would say was a little later on in the film, the jump cuts do get a lot better. So at the beginning of the film, I thought the jump cutting here in the fight scenes, probably because there's so many, they're actors at the end of the day. They've got stunt doubles, so they are trying to cover off a lot of probably connections between the stunt doubles and the actors. So not all of it. You can see the fighting. You can see, obviously, there's moments that Black Widow does that no human could do unless they are a stunt double and trained a stunt double for many years. So I could see why some of hers were covered up. And obviously Cap himself, Steve Rogers has a great fighting style, but I don't know whether all of that's going to be Chris Evans, to be honest.
No, probably not. I mean, they must have to use stunt doubles like at a large scale. There is so much action in this film, it beggars belief. I mean, at least 3 huge fight scenes, and a lot of rough and tumble.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk about them all because I love them. They're really, really good. There's a couple ones that I want to talk about later on, specifically connected to our podcast, which I think is a nice little touch for us. But the whole idea of them taking down Crossbones, being on a mission, is quite cool for the new Avengers. Great to see them together on a mission, and unfortunately, it does end in absolute tragedy as the youngest member of the team, the one that's switched over from being a villain in Age of Ultron, Scarlet Witch. Unfortunately, one that does cause the big explosion, as I mentioned earlier on, killing lots of aid workers.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, ultimately trying to save the explosion from going off, but she moves it and loses control. Yeah. But yeah, I really liked Crossbones here. I thought it was really good to get Brock Rumlow back into this movie. He was there previously. He was kind of the hidden sleeper Hydra agent within S.H.I.E.L.D. in Winter Soldier that obviously reveals his true colors eventually. Absolutely, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Derek O'Neill.
That's right.
And so I just thought it was really nice to have him back, and I love the fact as well that he makes Captain America lose his concentration for a real split second, and hence why Scarlet Witch has to come in to save the day, and it goes all wrong. But I love the fact that he does understand and know Captain America. He is kind of the antithesis here, and he's kind of playing for time. I love the fact that his face is all kind of squashed, melted, and he says, "It's not bad considering a helicarrier and a building fell on my face." But he mentions Bucky, and it just distracts Captain America for long enough, to the point where Rumlow is able to sort of try and counter Captain America, and it ends in absolute disaster. And it really then is the real big sort of starting gun for this movie. It's really good, and again, some great action sequences of them running after the members of Brumlow's team, of Crossbones' team, and tracking them down.
Absolutely, I love that you call him Brumlow as if he's from Birmingham, Brock Rumlow.
Well, yeah, maybe.
But I do want to call out one little not spoiler, Easter egg that was in that scene in there, which is Falcon's little piece of equipment, the little bird that flies out. That's Red Wing in the comic books. Red Wing is an actual falcon that is and controlled by Hawkeye. Sorry, apologies. That's controlled by Falcon. It's an actual Falcon that he sends out to do his bidding. It's called Red Wing. So I like that they kept that in with this new metallic, or I suppose Iron Man created this one as well.
Yeah, this was a cool bit of kit, actually. Flying around and tracking them all. Nice to have on your side, I reckon. Definitely.
So that's my first point. John, do you want to take us on to yours?
Yeah, my first point, I'm going to kick off with the Team Romanov aspect to what I was talking about right at the start. As I say, I think initially I was definitely Team Iron Man. I don't know, it feels right for me. But having said that, Captain America is truth, justice, and all those different notions as well. And something there that I was genuinely torn between the two. There's nothing like a good bit of oversight to control. Maybe some things that do need to be controlled. Certainly powerful beings. I mean, now you've got Scarlet Witch and Vision. A lot more sort of dangerous, powerful than Captain America. So I really liked Romanovs here because she's the middle. She too is like, say, the general audience. The general audience, if you're not absolutely firmly Team Cap or Team Iron Man, you're probably just going to go with one or the other for various reasons, but maybe you're actually sitting on the fence. And actually, as the film plays out, well, who is it? And I like that Scarlett Johansson's character, Black Widow, Romanov, that she is torn between the two, just like maybe the audience are. That she's friends with both of them, she's worked with both of them, she respects both of them, and she has to make a decision. Ultimately, she comes down on Iron Man. But then I love the aspect in the big the hangar at the airport where Black Panther, who is chasing after Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, that she stops him from actually capturing him. And it's kind of the phrase of, I may be on your side, but I didn't say I'd help you catch them. She's kind of helping both sides. And I think ultimately that's where I would have been. I definitely think, Captain America, way too personal on this, but he also has a valid point. So for me, I loved the Black Widow in this. I just thought she was really good. I think she had a really nice role in this film, which was that halfway house. It was the audience's way in, and to me, it worked. I think this was probably the best part of the Black Widow character that I think we've seen in the Marvel movies so far. I just thought it was really, really good. It wasn't just simply her getting into fast cars or kind of doing those one-off quips, which are fine. That's fine. But she really, I think, was the audience's way into supporting both these superheroes.
Yeah, what I love about Romanoff is that she was very central in Iron Man 2. She was very central in Winter Soldier, working with Captain America, helping him out when he was trying to escape the law, trying to escape the Hydra agents that were chasing him down, so she has had a very central part to play between these two main characters. And I do love the cutting remark from Tony after she lets Cap and Bucky escape, where he effectively says, do you find, I presume you find duplicity so easy since you've always played the double agent, you find it too hard to let it go, A great moment, because she is going with her gut, which she tends to do very well. It is a great part for Scarlett Johansson. I'm delighted that she gets this, because she does feel a little bit sidelined sometimes. She's been around in the cinematic universe since, as I said, Iron Man 2, which is almost every single film there. She's had some part to play within them in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it's great to get her and give her a good bit of meaty dialogue and good bit of meaty thought-provoking moments within this film, really. But that's what they do really well, I think, with McFeely and Marcus. I'm going to have to look down at my sheet every time I say their names so I can actually see them. But I think that's what they do really well. I think they do kind of latch onto characters and give them great moments.
Definitely.
Almost every character has a great moment. I want to talk about one of them myself for my next point, if that's all right. Which is Hawkeye, Clint Barton. He didn't get a great moment in Avengers, and a lot of people were really hating on his characterization in the movie, because he was treated as a background character. He was under the control of Loki throughout the film and didn't get many of his kind of quips or his kind of attitudes that people would have expected from the comic books. He's got a great run at the moment. I think it was just finished quite recently in the comic books, a really good one to go out and check out. But what they've done with him in Age of Ultron, being, again, giving him a backstory with a wife and kids, and this time now taking that on another step further, where he effectively is given the option to either sign the Accord or retire, and he decides to retire. He decides to just step out of it. He says, this isn't for me. Rather than actually saying no at the beginning, he doesn't join Team Cap. He just says, well, I don't want to be involved if I have to be followed by the government, if I have to just become another member of the army, effectively is what he's saying.
Yeah.
I'm going to step out of it. And then he goes and joins Team Cap when he realizes Cap's plight and Cap's argument. I love that he's given some really meaty moments in this. It's Hawkeye versus Vision. That's something you really don't expect. A guy with a bow and arrow. And it works.
It was fab, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really works. It works as a fight. You can see that he's thinking about things. I love that he has every single type of arrow that can do everything in that little quiver of his. Really feels like Green Arrow from the DC comic books, where he's got loads of different options in his quiver and uses them. But better. Yeah, better than the TV show version. Obviously, sorry, no offense to anybody that loves Arrow, but I think season 4 is probably. I think we're done at this stage. Yeah.
No, I just meant I prefer the comic book character.
Okay, grand. But then he also gets a great moment towards the end of the movie where he gets to stand up to Tony Stark. And he effectively announces the arrival of Tony Stark with applause, saying, the futurist is here. Do you like what you've done to your team and your friends? We're all behind bars. Is that what you wanted, Tony? A great moment for him as a character, because it's something that he doesn't get. He generally has been a bit subservient, obviously. Being controlled by Loki doesn't help. But he is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, or was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., so he always was the person that took the orders. So nice to see a different side of him.
I thought it was a really good side of him to play. I mean, the whole going to the farm and all that in Age of Ultron just seemed a bit odd to me. Yeah. And I really liked his involvement here, definitely. Mm-hmm. I was kind of fairly taken aback that they put them in prison and locked them up. I wasn't expecting that. I kind of was expecting kind of more of what we got at the airport, to have them essentially then all locked up. I thought was like a shock. I wasn't expecting it. And for Captain America then to be sort of still on the run, and Iron Man coming down and really kind of, trying to, I suppose, get them to sign the Accords still. But I wasn't expecting them to kind of get locked up and get captured in that way, definitely.
So that is absolutely from Civil War. That is what happens to you if you don't sign the Accords. And they catch you, you would be in prison. So a little bit of shorthand here. It's kind of something that happened. Again, it's 100 issues. I think it's the whole 110, something like that, is the whole run of comic books. So it didn't happen very often, but you do get quite big characters who don't sign the Accords, who are captured, put in prison. There's a lot of supervillains that are put in prison and then eventually released to join the Thunderbolts. I think that's where the creation of that came from. But it's not the Raft. I think the Raft was the initial housing place, but you can't house a lot of superheroes in a standard security prison, so they create
not much.
Yeah, they create another dimension. That's maybe what would have happened if we had Fantastic Four in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But yeah, that was one of my points. Just obviously the dealing of Hawkeye in the movie. John, do you want to take us on to the next?
Yeah, one? I'm going to bring on to another big character, and that is the AT-AT. No, I obviously mean Spider-Man, but also the AT-AT, right. Because the AT-AT reference here, for me, encapsulated Spider-Man, right. And that whole thing at the airport, him fighting and essentially talking all the way through it. I loved it. The chitter chatter, all of that. Absolutely thought it was fantastic. But I love that he's swinging through, shooting his web all over the place, and he just says, that old film, what's it called? And it's like, Empire Strikes Back. I mean, here we definitely have Star Wars and Marvel combined through Disney to really cross-pollinate all these different properties. But I love that AT-AT reference. And for me, it really summed up Spider-Man as he's fighting, making like real quips and jokes, and unknowingly kind of really just rubbing people up the wrong way to an extent. Not in a bad way, but just, what do you mean old? It's like, I was thinking the same thing. I was going, that's exactly what I would have said as well to Spider-Man. That played really, really well by Tom Holland. Definitely brings a much younger feel to Peter Parker. I was going to say Clark Kent for a minute. I was like, going, completely wrong universe, even wrong property. But definitely, I thought it was really good how he brought sort of an innocence, maybe a naivety, if you will, and just an honesty, that honesty that comes along as well. I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought that was excellent. And I mean, certainly as well, just the AT-AT reference, we have the flip side of that, another big thing. And that is Ant-Man Goes Big.
Yes.
Like, loved it. All these things combined for me into one super duper scene with Ant-Man, who I thought I loved. Just the quips coming out of them, the two of them there, really, really cool. Loved it.
Yeah, I have to say, Paul Rudd, he's such a weird character in this film, and I've seen loads of interviews with him leading up to the movie where he's kind of saying nobody really talked to him that much. He's kind of left out a bit. That's total play acting. That's Paul Rudd. He just seems to have such a fun time in a completely different way to Tom Holland, obviously being the older kind of character. I love his first introduction to Captain America with I'm shaking your hand too long, haven't I? Oh, I know you as well. That's really good fun. And Ant-Man, while it wasn't a hugely successful film, we did cover it on the podcast. You can go back and listen to episode 32, I think, or 35, something like that. We did really enjoy it overall, and particularly Paul Rudd's performance in that movie was great. He really does bring out a good quippy kind of side to him. I love the whole idea that he gets the biggest moment, as everybody has underlined in all of the reviews for Civil War. He gets the biggest moment in Civil War just because they bring in Giant Man.
Yeah, literally, he gets the biggest moment.
Exactly.
Hey,
now we get the joke.
Absolutely, loved that. I just thought it was so good. I've tried it once. I passed out after I'd done it in the bath. Was it? No, just in the lab. That was it, in the lab.
Yeah. So really enjoyed that, but you have not taken my point, but obviously you can't talk about this movie without talking about Spider-Man. He's such a huge character in this, and I was really surprised. I went to see the premiere of it in Ireland, which was on 2 weeks ago. Really, really enjoyed seeing it with premiere. A room full of comic book fans, of comic book shop owners, of press, that kind of stuff. But going to see that movie for the first time, where people had not really heard a huge amount about Spider-Man's involvement, they'd seen the trailer a bit and were hoping for something good. The opening scene where we see Tony in the apartment with Peter Parker and Hot Aunt May, which has its great moments to it.
I loved it.
But by the end of that scene, after Spider-Man has explained why he does what he does and why he wants to continue doing what he's doing, at the end of that, without any mention of with great power comes great responsibility, which I was really expecting to roll off his tongue at some point. It doesn't mention that, but explains really well why Spider-Man does what he does. Right after that moment, the audience rose up in applause to praise this version of Spider-Man. It feels like a different Spider-Man. I know everybody has a favorite now. There's been tons of them. At this stage, we're on to our third version of Spider-Man in the cinematic universe. So, so look, it's only 10 minutes or 15 minutes in the film, but he makes such an impression. It really reminds me of the Spider-Man I loved when I was younger, and Spider-Man I still love now. Really, really good version of the character. I love the correction from Falcon when he's saying, I don't know how many fights you've been in before, but people don't usually talk this much.
I love that. I thought that was so good.
When Tony Stark is saying to him, can you just shut up? This isn't the time for conversation. When he's given the salute to Cap America, there's some really great moments. Cool. And one also wonderful one, and the reason why we have our Civil War picky up behind us, if you're watching us over on YouTube, the reason why we have that up there, Spider-Man is unmasked in this film, which I really, really like, but it's not a big point. That was a huge point in Civil War, that Spider-Man would come out from the shadows after 30 years, or probably 5 years of comic book history, after 30 years, and reveal himself to the public. I love the little touch in here after the battle in the airport, where he's lying on the ground with his mask off. So he has actually revealed who he is to all the other people around, and nobody else is wearing masks the whole time through that fight, are they?
Yeah.
So everybody knows who everybody else is except for him, and he's left on the ground with the mask half off. So I like that little touch, just to kind of a little nod to the unmasking, but it wasn't necessary in the film. They didn't need to do a big, he stands up in front of the public and goes, "This is who I am." That wasn't necessary.
No.
But yeah, absolutely loved how they dealt with that, with Spider-Man in this film. Really, really enjoyed it.
And what did you think of the suit?
The suit was fantastic, and I love the way it was treated. So we have our YouTube videos of Spider-Man swinging through the streets, which turn out to actually be Tony Stark's footage of him. And then Tony does exactly what he does in the comic books. He builds him the Iron Spider suit, effectively, but it actually looks like much more like the comic book version of Spider-Man.
Yeah, I love the nuggety one that he pulls out from under his wardrobe. Yeah. So yeah, from the roof. I loved that. I loved. It reminded me of Kick-Ass and the fact that, you know, he's gone to this trouble to make his own costume. Loved that. I loved just the whole banter between him and Iron Man in Aunt May's apartment, even just down to Tony Stark spitting out her Dayton and walnut loaf after complimenting her and saying, "I've had better." Like, I mean, that's total Tony Stark.
Well, it's the best Dayton and walnut loaf he's ever had, which is insane.
It's just really, really good. I loved all that, you know, and just the fact that he knows as well. He absolutely knows about young Peter Parker and what he's up to. Loved it.
Yeah, very, very cool. And he gets top to bottom upgrade. So right the way through, this is the upgrade. I love the idea of having the lenses in his mask that are able to help him focus. I think that's a great idea. And we get not web shooters coming from his wrists, created web shooters that Peter Parker created himself, exactly like in the comic books. Really cool that this isn't part of the spider bite that he got. This is something that he's created himself because of all the other abilities that he's got. So really, really cool. They're keeping to that canon. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in Spider-Man Homecoming, which is coming up very soon, I'm sure. John, do you want to take us on away from the spiders and the ants?
Yeah, I'm going to move away from the good guys to the bad guys.
Oh, yes.
Or to the, maybe you could argue, the lack of bad guys. But what I had an issue with Ant-Man, the film, and it was my primary issue, really. And after that, I loved Ant-Man, but I thought the villain was pretty tropey, pretty, to quote Chris, our fellow podcaster, who can't actually be here today. But you know, he was this muhahaha kind of villain. You know, it was the motives and all of this were fairly obscure, and I just didn't gel with the villain. And I love the actor, who I can't remember his name now, but obviously he was in House of Cards in season 1, and great in that. Absolutely, was really looking forward to it. And I just thought, you know, the villain wasn't the best part about that film at all. But here, I loved the bad guy and guys. I love the fact that the bad guys ultimately could have been any side, Team Cap, Team Iron Man, depending on which side you came down on.
Very true.
I love the fact that it was the group and this internal conflict and fight that they were beginning to get into. That was the protagonist, and well, should I say the antagonist in this movie, was these internal tensions and conflicts between different members of this, up till now, really close team. You know, exactly what's civil about war anyway, kind of thing. This is fantastic. You know,
Guns N' Roses.
Quote Guns N' Roses. You know, pitting friend against friend. It is, you know, one of the sadder aspects is a civil war, because of that. Family against family,
Absolutely.
Friend against friend, brother against brother, sister against sister, all of that. And this really caught the essence of that for me in these tensions that are kept on rising between Team Cap and Team Iron Man. And I think the other aspect that I loved then was with Zemo, played by Daniel Bruhl from Rush So he has also acted against with Thor before.
That's right.
In that movie about the Formula One legend, and he played Niki Lauda. But
that's right. Excellent.
I absolutely loved him as the villain. Understated, a rational reason maybe of revenge and vengeance in that he lost his family. He works his way through, he says, more powerful, greater men than me have tried to pull down the Avengers and failed. What better way than to let them destroy each other from within.
Absolutely.
Like, fantastic, which means he has to be on the sidelines. You don't know his motives. He lurks in the dark. I mean, quite frankly, up until the final scene when he gets into there's this huge Soviet era bunker in Siberia, and it's where the Winter Soldier project had been. It's where the pouches of whatever was contained in them, they look blue, actually. I think
it's Captain America's blood.
That's it. It's the serum infused blood, isn't it?
The final batches of it that Howard Stark was carrying with him that we heard about in Ant-Man.
And we have this situation where you think he's actually going to get the other Winter Soldiers. So there's about 5 or 6 other Winter Soldiers, and we see this story play out in flashback through this film. And in fact, the film starts with that, and he goes in and he shoots them in the head. That is not his motive. His motive is pure, plain and simple revenge, and it's understated yet terrifying. And that is what I loved about Daniel Bruhl in this as Zemo.
I loved his delivery of the line, which is, did you think I wanted more of you? Is that what you think I wanted? Look what you did to my life, kind of thing. Delivers it so well. It's a really passionate character. While we see, he's almost like a born identity kind of villain. He's one of those kind of characters that could fit in with any of those type of films, a really good conspiracy movie. But he works really well here. And this is why I feel it does work so well as a Captain America film rather than as an Avengers film. He's not a supervillain coming from another planet or coming from another realm. Or
he's not the big bad. He isn't this big bad. He's
Absolutely.
Not Thanos. He's not the Chitauri. He's not Loki. These big bads that actually only the Avengers can take down. The FBI, the New York police could have gotten this guy. Absolutely. The Austrian police, he's the one that frames Bucky Barnes, that ultimately helps split apart the Avengers here by making it personal for Captain America to really harden his resolve against fighting the signing of the Sokovia Accords. So he really is fantastic because it didn't require superheroes to stop him.
Absolutely.
And that's what is great about this this villain, Zemo, in this movie.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, it absolutely feels like he's essentially a terrorist. He's trying to set 2 armies against each other by creating some conflict between the 2 of them. The armies that he's trying to actually set against each other are the world versus the Avengers, and then ends off breaking the Avengers against each other, and then internal fighting, and we find that was his plan all along, which I love. I think it's such a great idea for a bad guy, and I don't know how they would top it in the future. I don't know how they do it in Captain America 4. How do you create another villain as kind of manipulative and interesting as that character?
Right, who knows? I mean, the other thing is he's intent on this record from, was it 1961, 1964?
1991, wasn't it?
No, the video coverage of the Winter Soldier.
1991.
It was 91. Okay,
yeah.
I thought it was okay. Fair enough. He's intent on this record from the files of whatever, the KGB, the Soviet era facility, and he's looking for them. And this is what ultimately, on the brink of maybe Team Cap, Team Iron Man coming back together, resolving their differences, it just splits it apart even further. And okay, we'll come to what's actually on that tape a little later. I think that's one of your points.
Into it now.
Well, exactly.
Points, yeah.
But I think just finally on Zemo, I think just the way he at the end is essentially brought into custody. So he's still alive, but he's brought into custody by T'Challa, the Black Panther. And T'Challa has been seeking out revenge on Bucky Barnes for the entire film because he thinks that Bucky is responsible for the death of his father, the former king of Wakanda. So, and he's intent on killing him. Absolute vengeance, no justice, not bringing him in to the law for a trial. This is about he will get killed. And with Zemo, he doesn't do that. He actually says, I understand where you're coming from. I too have looked for vengeance and revenge killing. And so he, in this instance then, does essentially bring him in for trial and being put in prison. So I really like the kind of ending. Again, it wasn't a death. It wasn't him falling back over a cliff. This was quite, again, understated, because the big battle is internally between the Avengers, and this understated battle, or arrest by T'Challa, leading to Zemo being put away somewhere in a similar box that Bucky Barnes was.
Exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same thing. I like that they had the option there where they have Daniel Brühl and his version of Zemo putting the gun to his head and being stopped by T'Challa. He was very close to killing himself off, and that would be the end of the character. It's the kind of thing you would see in some other circles or some other movies, excuse me. But I like that they kind of bring it back to T'Challa's story and bring it back to the I see you're being eaten up inside by vengeance. So was I, but I'm going to stop that cycle now and move on effectively. I thought that was really, really good.
Yeah, really good. Yeah. So, Derek, can I ask what your next point is?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring this one back to our podcast for fans or for listeners. I keep calling you fans. You're not fans, you're listeners. Delighted to have you around, of course. But for listeners of our podcast, you'll know that we covered 2 full seasons of Agent Carter. We mentioned it earlier on in the podcast. I just want to pull out quickly here a very sad moment for me watching this in the cinema. I was kind of torn up by this, almost in the same way as something like Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, where we lost Gandalf. Spoilers for Fellowship of the Ring.
But Boromir, I must say, I thought that was quite emotional.
Absolutely. And in this movie, we've lost 2 of our major characters that we followed throughout 2 seasons.
I know.
Of Agent Carter. We lost Agent Carter in her sleep, don't get a moment with her. And we lost Howard Stark in the biggest scene, which I know you're going to take as one of your points later on. But losing these 2 characters, having the kind of end of their era, while they are, in their 60s at this stage, or 70s, I think, at this stage, it's still the end of an era. I know that, Peggy was obviously in for the first Avenger. She did survive and live long enough to be in Captain America Winter Soldier, and now we see her funeral in this movie. But we've also spent a long amount of time with the character in those 2 seasons of Agent Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it was just a really sad moment to have it, but I like that it pulled and grounded Captain America back to his moment, back to his time, back to his friends, and kind of brought that resolve in, which does kind of a little bit of an addendum to the point, I suppose, is the proper introduction of Sharon Carter in this film. So Sharon Carter is huge for the Captain America character in the comic books. She's really big. She was in, obviously, Winter Soldier as his neighbor and the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. that was spying on him, Agent 13. We'll talk about that one, I'm sure. But I love that it does connect the character. I think there was some kind of idea that maybe this isn't Sharon Carter, maybe it's a niece, or maybe it's a daughter potentially, or a granddaughter or something like that. I love that it's firmly established here, and she gets a very Peggy Carter line in her eulogy for her aunt at Peggy Carter's funeral. I think in another world, this could have been a line that was given to Haley Atwell to say, maybe in a flashback with Captain America in one of their wartime raids. It might have been a line that she would have said. But I love that it's delivered by Sharon Carter. It gives her something really important and really, I suppose, a real good character development for her, that she is very similar to her aunt. How did you get to the position that you're in those days when women had these kind of struggles? And it was, if people let you do things, say that's okay. If people stand in your way, don't allow them. If you feel you're right, that's when you're a tree. Don't let them run over you. You stand there like the trunk of a tree. Be strong in your opinions and in your beliefs. I love that that's a moment, because it really does feel like something Haley Atwell's Peggy Carter would have said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose if you're Team Iron Man, you could say, obstinate, or, stubborn.
But it gives
stumping,
stumping, maybe. But it does give Steve his resolve.
It does, and that's the great driver on that. I mean, it is kind of one of my points actually with regards to Peggy getting buried here, and also what happens to Howard Stark as well. You know, as you say, we have here the timeline for Howard and Peggy is finished.
Yeah.
And that's them. We've seen Peggy's start in Captain America, the First Avenger, and now we have her end. And to me, this is why I'm going to put it out there now. I think the Captain America trilogy in this Marvel Cinematic Universe has been, for me, the best 3 films. I love Iron Man 3. I love the first Thor. I really liked Avengers Assemble. You know, I love the first Iron Man as well. But for me, it's these through lines that we've gotten in Captain America, which invests you, which makes this film, which is about a civil war, it makes it even more interesting for me. Because there's something at stake. And what I mean by that is, you know, we've got the through line of Peggy Carter's character being a real motivator for Steve Rogers, you know, being the first love of his life and being taken away from her by him being frozen and him waking up, and she has, you know, quite literally aged and moved on away from him, thinking he's been dead for, you know, 50 years. And then the other is with Bucky Barnes, you know, Steve Rogers' childhood friend, his protector almost. You know,
all he wanted to do was fight in the front lines with his best friend.
Exactly. And then with the Winter Soldier. So that personal investment in protecting Bucky Barnes, in protecting, in particular, Bucky, not necessarily the Winter Soldier, knowing what his friend has gone through, knowing how he worked with his friend in Captain America: First Avenger, was pitted against him when he in Winter Soldier, and now is looking to be his savior in the Civil War. I really, really like this, and this is to me what makes these 3 films so good, and as a whole a really good trilogy, because yes, everyone says they're all connected, but this is, I think, to me, a proper connection, a true connection. And it really helps with the background of all these characters, and to help give a reason for why the Civil War is happening, at least from the Captain America perspective as well. And for that, I really, really liked that. I think before I go on to Howard Stark, though, and his storyline, because obviously that has a huge implication for this movie. Don't know about Steve, Captain America kissing Haley Atwell's niece. I actually I didn't realize they were so connected in the comics, actually, because I must say I'm not a big Captain America comic book fan.
You just have to go in and look at my comic box inside.
Yeah, no, I know. But I was like, she's only just been buried. No, I did. I did. I was there going, but Peggy's just buried.
I
know you have to move on, and you probably weren't particularly, you know.
Yeah.
I just kind of felt, okay, he's moved on very quickly here. You know, let's you know, wait until she's in the ground.
Well, yeah, he's been back in our time, I suppose. He's been in our time now for, you know, 8 years or so. I think there's a lot of kind of fun jokes out there about Cap possibly being a virgin, because he was definitely hadn't been with anybody before he got into the army. He became Captain America, then he got iced and sent to the 90s.
Well,
so he's effectively the 100-year-old virgin. Is kind of the gag that's out there, you know. But I love that it is with Sharon. No, I love that it is with Sharon Carter, because she has got such a connection with him in the comic book. She's been around since the 60s. Again, introduced as Agent 13. Wasn't until I think 1968 that she revealed the connection between herself and Peg, which I thought was quite cool.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I'm being slightly flippant. It's just in the film you see Peggy getting buried. Obviously, Steve Rogers is carrying the coffin, so that honor isn't given to everyone. He's there. Susan's looking down, speaking to him from the pulpit.
Susan?
Is it Susan?
Sharon.
Sorry, Sharon is looking down from the pulpit, essentially, as you say, maybe saying some words that, quite frankly, could have come from Peggy's mouth.
Yeah.
It really resolves him against the Accords. And I suppose it's just very soon after he's, I suppose who wouldn't, but like, giving her a kiss under the arches. And I suppose, yeah. I just thought it was a bit. It felt just immediately that it just happened immediately after Peggy had been laid to rest, and I was like, oh, fast mover.
Well, he did travel 2
enough.
countries, I think, in between that time.
He probably did, but fair enough.
But it did lead up to a great moment between between Cap's 2 sidekicks, between Falcon and Winter Soldier in the back of that tiny vehicle where they're stuffed into with all their muscles, where the 2 of them just kind of look at their best friend and give him a little wink. Really good. Got a great reaction from the audience.
That was great. Actually, their reaction.
Yeah, kind of cool to see these 2.
But it would have been good if Bucky Barnes had kind of gone,
"That's your grandniece." But I do love the fact that these 2 characters themselves have a little bit of interplay between each other, because again, they're 2 partners separated by 60 years of Captain America. Bucky's his best friend, but Falcon's really taken on that role in the last. I suppose they've been around together for about 2 or 3 years. I suppose since the Winter Soldier. They must have been working together about 2 or 3 years now. So I like that they have their own opinions and know what they think is best for Cap. And I like that they have the interplay between each other. So in the fight with Spider-Man, for example, when Spider-Man takes the 2 of them out, and the Winter Soldier, and Falcon knocks out Spider-Man, takes him outside. Winter Soldier goes to him, "Why didn't you do that earlier on?" And Falcon says, "I hate you." Great little moment between the 2 of them, but just to kind of show that there is a little bit of rivalry as to who should be working with Cap now. I think it should be Falcon. I think there's still some things that Bucky has to sort out.
Oh, definitely, yeah. A missing arm for one.
Absolutely.
Spoilers. Yeah, absolutely.
I think this whole podcast is spoilers. If you've joined us
really
before the podcast and gotten this far,
it's Howard Stark as well. That is the other thing. Like, we have the death of Howard Stark and his wife, and this is like, I think just it's so good, because we see it right at the start where Winter Soldier takes out this car and then goes and grabs something from the boot, and we just see it as being Captain America's blood, the vials or the pouches of blood. Yeah.
And just the reason why I know it's 1991, the reason why it stuck in my head is because it's a couple of years after the Ant-Man flashback that had Peggy Carter and the one that had Peggy Carter and Howard Stark in it. That happened in about 1989, 1988. So it had to be just after that when Howard was
I think the real flashback to 64 is where the Winter Soldier is essentially having the brainwash take hold for the first time, where they're reading from the Little Red communist book. That was really cool, sort of the different key trigger words to get his mind into Winter Soldier, death, kill, kind of like stabby kind of mode.
Even though the last one was Freight Train, which is how he died. How he was taken out,
which is kind of weird.
Very interesting. I guess it's all moments from his past. I'd like to analyze that list. I'm sure I will when it comes out in Blu-ray. But I'm sure it's things that were connected in his life before he became.
Everyone likes their trains, even Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier.
Trains.
Exactly.
Anyway,
everyone has their niche. But this is, you have that right at the beginning, and you're kind of going, okay, really interesting. What's this about? You see the pouches being taken, and you see that it's obviously for developing more Winter Soldiers. And then right at the end, after Captain America and Bucky have gone to this Soviet facility where all the other Winter Soldiers that have been created have been put into stasis, and you think that they're going to get released, and there's going to be this army of Winter Soldiers. They've all got a bullet through the head, and you have Zemo then just play the footage of this takedown by the Winter Soldier of this car, and all of a sudden you realize that the passengers are Tony Stark's mom and dad, Howard Stark and his wife.
Yeah.
And like how Iron Man is there. He's come because he's heard that actually it is not Bucky Barnes who created the explosion in Vienna, that it is another person, and they've found the doctor that Zemo killed in order to infiltrate and reactivate the Winter Soldier effectively with this little red communist book. And it's all unraveling at the moment when they should be coming back together to fight as a team. This one tape destroys that reconciliation in one foul swoop, and you get the amazing fight scene, which we saw a lot of in the trailers. And it was just visceral. I mean, you have Bucky, Winter Soldier, and Captain America beating down on Iron Man,
just passing the shield back and forth between the two of them. Absolutely fantastic. But I have to say, when I saw it in the trailer, I was kind of going, "Yeah, take that, Iron Man." And where it really was, I was kind of going, he must have done something to annoy them or kind of get them really off his side. He didn't. He's just been shown a video of his parents getting slaughtered, his mother being strangled to death in a car. Really tough, brutal, and a great moment from Robert Downey Jr., I must say. Really, his acting in that scene, top quality. He's one of the best actors, obviously, in the franchise. That's why he keeps making the movies. That's why so many people come back for the movies. But that moment of, I'm not going to stop here, Steve. He killed my mom. I don't care whether he was brainwashed to do it. I've just watched what's happened to my parents, you know. One thing I want to call out quickly about this, early on we see that scene when Tony's doing kind of a flashback with his technology to saying goodbye to his parents for the final time, the thing he didn't get to do, a kind of thing. How do you think that worked? This is the kind of technology that was used in Tron Legacy to de-age Lloyd Bridges, no, Jeff Bridges, yeah, the brother,
the son.
Where that's right, yeah, Bo Bridges is the brother. But the technology that de-aged Robert Downey Jr. in that scene when he's kind of looks like he did back in the 80s.
Yeah, I thought it worked. I thought it worked really well. I mean, okay, you could tell it obviously that it's some kind of special effects, but then it worked, and then, irrespective of the special effects and how good they are, it is to do with the fact that it was supposed to be a computer simulation projection. So it didn't really matter in the end whether you liked it or not, but I thought it looked really good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I think it's one of those really smart things that Marvel tend to be quite good at when they're using pieces of technology that could look a little off, when they use CGI that could be a little bit dodgy. They do have a kind of in-show reason or in-movie reason for why it might look a little bit dodgy. And I like that they used it here, where it's effectively, well, it's brand new technology. It cost me $600 million to make this, and I don't think it's that good. It'll get better in the future. That's actually what Tony Stark is saying to the audience. Don't worry about it. This isn't something that you have to latch onto. We're not going to be doing this so they can make young Iron Man movies in the future, now that they have the model of Tony Stark. Yeah. Possible they might do that in future with Robert Downey Jr.
Big time. It's really good how they do it. And I mean, I think 2 points for me on this as well, that, you know, I really, really liked Bucky Barnes in this. I thought really good. And I just liked that that transition between being the Winter Soldier and then trying to feel his way back to Bucky Barnes again. That to me was really good. I liked the banter that he had with Falcon. Yeah, I loved all of that. And I think that final fight sequence, because I mean that is the big that's the big reveal here. And it's just him and Captain fighting on the basis of what Iron Man knows, and you kind of, these three people fighting, you're kind of going like, this just can't end well. And like, quite frankly, it doesn't. I mean, Bucky has his metal arm ripped off. Iron Man is essentially, I mean, almost, you know, Captain America's shield through his breastplate with the arc reactor in there.
So like he was going for Tony's head.
And it so looked like he was trying to destroy the arc reactor so that Tony, those fragments of shrapnel would start to move towards the heart, like really dangerous for Tony Stark. So
those have been removed, but yeah, maybe the new arc reactor. The end of Iron Man 3, he got them removed by the Chinese doctor. Remember?
I don't remember that now, but yeah,
but maybe this new smash on the chest could have created a brand new pieces of the arc reactor going towards his heart.
Really, really good. I really liked Bucky Barnes in this movie. Really did. And I thought it was portrayed so well.
And can I just once again give a huge shout out for that awesome theme tune that he has, the really evil violins that kind of accompany at the entrance of the Winter Soldier. Love it. Yeah. Love that theme.
Sebastian Stan, isn't it? Really good. Absolutely. Really liked him in this. I can't emphasize that enough. And I think as well, I should say, Robert Downey Jr., he goes to a dark place here. He's quite melancholic, really. And I mean, even before the footage of seeing his mum and dad murdered, he's resolved by the sobering reminder that he has killed millions of innocent people, ultimately trying to protect them. But when our casualties of war too much, certainly innocent people who aren't the soldiers on the ground fighting, this collateral damage, when is enough?
Absolutely.
And I mean, I love how he takes that up and on himself, and he becomes really dark and moody and brooding about it. And he doesn't understand Captain America. I completely understand that. And I just loved how Robert Downey Jr. portrayed that. I thought it was excellent. And I mean, then he becomes just so vengeful as well. You see the anger. Really good. Really good.
Certainly. And I also like the fact that brought in another reason for Tony to be in this dark place that he's in at the beginning of the film. Like, he was in a dark place at the end of Iron Man 3 because of what happened in the Avengers, the flashbacks that he was having to falling out of space, effectively dying as he was coming back into the ground in New York. We find out that Pepper and himself are on a break, that himself and Pepper Potts are now broken up because he couldn't give up being Iron Man. There is now a reason why he's back in the suit. But I like that they keep him out of the suit for quite a while in this film. I kind of think that's probably Robert Downey Jr. I think he wants to be on screen a bit more himself. He kind of feels like he's an actor that wants to work with other people. And a lot of the Iron Man stuff is done in a box with some lights shining in his face, effectively. So I like that they created something specifically for that. This is the first time we've seen a fold-away helmet where you see Tony Stark's head on top of the body of Iron Man. It's not, he doesn't have to take off a helmet or do something convoluted like that. He presses a button and the head's gone. So I like that little touch. But yeah, loved Tony Stark in this, and he looks pretty battered and bruised. Like, he gets a punch reasonably early on in the face, and that kind of leaves him with the proper big black eye for most of the rest of the film. But yeah, really tough moments in this film. I do think it's quite dark in places, but with a good bit of humor. I love the addition of Ant-Man and the addition of Spider-Man in there.
Oh, fantastic. Really good. Yeah, as you say, they lighten it up. Derek, what's your next point?
So mine is another kind of connection to our podcast as well. We're currently covering Daredevil season 2 over on Netflix. And there's a scene within this movie, which is Bucky Barnes related, that really had me thinking of a scene within Daredevil. Can you remember the scene, John? Can you think of what scene I might be talking about? It's where Bucky's escaping. No. It's where Bucky's escaping from his apartment with the battering ram that was used to bash down the door. He takes the battering ram off the first guy and then does the circular fight all the way down the stairs.
Down the stairs,
with Cap following him down, trying to stop him killing the guys.
That is from Daredevil season 2,
isn't it?
Episode 3.
I think it's episode 3. Episode 2 or episode 3. Yeah, but it really does feel like as if Bucky is a mix of Daredevil and the Punisher in season 2 of Daredevil. I love how he's taking people out, and then Cap does the reverse. Cap is Daredevil to his Punisher, where he's going, "Can you please stop killing people?"
Yeah, that was very cool. Very cool. And I loved how the iron railings up the staircase, how he just snaps them off and uses it under his own weight to just drop down. I thought that was pretty cool.
It's very, very, very cool. Pretty cool. I should have checked it out. I meant to check it out for the podcast. If you're listening, please pop it into us. I'm sure that Philip Silvera, who is the the stunt coordinator for Daredevil and for the Winter Soldier, I believe, was involved, and Chris Brewster, I know, was involved in the Winter Soldier. So I'm sure that team in some way were involved in particularly these scenes where it is characters fighting against each other, not much CGI, as far as I could tell. But really good. Really, really enjoyed that scene. John, do you want to take us on to your last point? Have we gone through 5 yet, listeners?
I think we have. Yeah. I'm coming up to my 5th.
Okay.
And actually, I'm just going to have to say I've changed it round. So actually, my 5th is going to have to be one of my notes.
Okay.
And that's the introduction of T'Challa and the Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved that it wasn't just a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was proper integrated into the storyline, and I thought fair dues to Marvel for doing that. You know, a lot more screen time, much more integral to the storyline. I loved how, you know, he's there because of the death of his father, and this whole vengeance and revenge. You know, it takes place 3 times here. We have with Iron Man, we have with Zemo, and we have with T'Challa. And I loved the outfit. The costume was cool.
Wasn't it brilliant?
The movement, that chase scene under the in the tunnel.
Oh, with the cars.
With the cars,
mm-hmm.
with Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier on the bike. Oh, I loved it. It was just so
where Bucky grabs the handlebars, the bike flips it around and gets on.
And kind of, you know, like a cat. Black Panther just like swipes at the back wheel with his paw it, and just knocks the bike going. I loved it. I really thought it was excellent. I loved his motivation. I loved how him and Zemo at the end, to an extent, they don't bond. That's the wrong word, but he understands why Zemo is doing what he's doing. But he realizes, as you said before, you know, you have to be taken in. There is too much now in your heart. You know, he, on realizing his mistake with Bucky, that it wasn't Bucky that did this, is, you know, I have to give this up because I can be chasing my own tail like a little kitty on the lawn.
So you like cats? Is that why you're wearing the outfit? I love that from Falcon. That was great too.
Yeah, I just really thought this is a fantastic introduction of the character.
Certainly.
Into the Marvel universe. Dare I say it? It would have been amazing if they'd done that with Doctor Strange. I'm not bitter.
Nope.
I'm not bitter. But I thought this was fantastic for Black Panther. Absolutely. You know, a bigger part than Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And much bigger, much more integral. You know, Spider-Man ultimately is a cameo, I think, in a large sense of that word.
But this is something to do, which is probably the big thing that I find different to the cameo here. The cameo in this film is Stan Lee. This is the only cameo.
Yeah.
Everybody else seems to have something to do.
Yeah. Oh no. Absolutely. Yeah. But I just think Black Panther was much more central to the story.
Certainly.
What did you think of that Stan Lee cameo?
It's a fun little gag.
I thought it was the worst one, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
That we've had.
Do you know, you don't like Tony Stank? Huh? I did see it on Twitter within about 2 days of the movie coming out.
It didn't work for me. I just I think just him being in a UPS or a DHL or whatever courier company it was with
they probably paid millions.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
The placement of their company, and you forgot
it felt shoehorned. It felt really hammy. Actually.
I think after the Deadpool cameo, I don't think Stan Lee can make a cameo any better than that.
No, well, that is true.
He's reached the ceiling. Now, I think, if I remember correctly, he's done that particular version of Stan Lee, the delivery guy. I think that was in either the first Fantastic Four film, or in the first Iron Man film. I think that was his cameo in one of those two. I really want to find that one out. So let us know again over at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or if you're watching live and you know it, just pop it into our Q&A or in that section there. That'd be great. But yeah, the actual cameo itself, not great. It was just a little moment, but I like that it gave a little bit of release, I suppose, for the really sad moment between War Machine and Iron Man, effectively, where War Machine is kind of going, I'm the casualty of this war.
Yeah,
everybody else has walked away okay
brutal,
here, and
actually.
I've got a broken back. You know?
Yeah, that was pretty brutal.
Yeah, and still willing to stay with his beliefs and still willing to be anti the Accord, or sorry, pro the Civil War, pro the Accords. That's what it is. Still willing to be pro them. Doesn't have any problem with being injured by this, but knows it's going to be a tough road back for him. But did like that part of it.
But Black Panther, and obviously with Black Widow for me, like fantastic in this movie.
And sorry to bring back to Black Panther. My apologies, I got sidelined there by Stan Lee. But Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, I really think he had a great role in this film. The death of his father after the explosion, and him screaming at the sky with the really great frame scene, a really sad scene. I thought it really tore at me. I'm trying to think his father's name. I've just forgotten it. Not T'Chaka.
The King of Wakanda.
King of Wakanda. We'll just call him that.
Senior.
No, it's definitely it's definitely got a TCH at the start of it. I should remember this, but anyway, did really like that.
Distracted by a ball of wool.
I know. I know.
But you know, I really enjoyed Black Panther in this. So I'm really now. I mean, I don't have too many Black Panther comic books. I don't really know the character that well. I think in some of the new Avengers, I think with the Secret War, I've come at it from those larger stories that utilize Wakanda and Black Panther in them, rather than being or having standalone Black Panther comics.
Yeah.
So I was looking forward to the film, but I think even more so now, I'm really looking forward to the Black Panther film.
And can I say, the claws are so cool, especially, and you'll see it towards the end of the film, especially the fact that his claws can actually penetrate Cap's shield really shows the power of the
kitty scratch on Captain America's shield.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I think we're going to go into notes now. I think we've had our top fives. Is that okay?
Well, I was just going to say briefly on this. The other aspect of setting up Black Panther is we do get Martin Freeman
yes, of course.
in the movie as well, playing Everett Ross. And he is a character from the Black Panther comics and associated with that world just as much. And, you know, it definitely felt like an intro here. I mean, for such a big name, obviously he's involved with Sherlock, so obviously he knows Doctor Strange.
And the Hobbit.
And the Hobbit, yeah.
Can't keep apart, the two of them, really.
No, they can't really. So I wonder if he will make it into the Doctor Strange movie, possibly. You never know. But this really did feel like an introduction to Martin Freeman's character, and that maybe, you know, it's just setting up this character for the Black Panther film, for future Marvel films, you know, in different capacities, I think. So in some ways, it was a bit odd, Martin Freeman's role here. I was expecting more, given the how well known the actor is. But I suspect this is kind of a little flavor of the character and what he's about. Ultimately.
Yeah, I felt a little bit disappointed because I absolutely love Martin Freeman, to be honest. I felt a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to see much of him on here. Wondering if there are some extra scenes that we didn't see in the film that we might see on Blu-ray maybe, because he seems to be generally the kind of playful character that would have other scenes. But yes, very likely that we'll see him in the upcoming Black Panther film, and hopefully we'll see him in October when Doctor Strange comes out, definitely. But with that, I think I want to go on to a couple of little notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the big thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, what do you do at the end? You talk about the post-credit scenes.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about them yet. So it's the other big question for everybody when you're going to see a Marvel film. Do you stay to the end, or do you leave halfway through, or do you leave the minute the credits start, or what? You always stay to the end if you're a Marvel fan. I did the first time when we saw the first movie, and when we saw the movie the first time at the premiere, and they didn't have two tags in the cinema. They did have two tags. I'm going to spoil both of them in case you've only gone and did walk out before the final scene. I want to say the mid-credits scene should have been part of the film.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
It felt like it was edited and put out of place because there was maybe too many endings. Maybe it was mentioned Lord of the Rings a couple of times in here, but maybe they felt it was a bit too Return of the King, that they had 4 endings there for Cap and for Iron Man. So maybe that was the reason. But I really did feel the setup for Wakanda and for what was happening to Bucky Barnes was central to this film.
Yeah.
We need to know that Bucky is under lock and key now in Wakanda, and that effectively the proponents for the Accords will be coming to chase down the Winter Soldier. They don't believe that he's done that there's been any resolution here. So if they find that he's in Wakanda, they're going to attack Wakanda. That's what the whole scene's about, really. Yeah. But cool images of the country, I guess.
Yeah.
Wakanda, yeah, it's a country, of course. Cool images, and as a Carolina Panthers fan, seeing the gigantic Black Panther right outside of the headquarters of T'Challa was very cool, because it looks exactly like what's outside Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte.
No, I really liked that first post-credit scene, and I completely agree. It should have been at the end of the movie. Then the second one, which is Spider-Man, should have been the first post-credit scene that we have. And for me, anyway, this is probably the only podcast ever that will say it, I think it would have been really good to have had Doctor Strange.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I'm a big fan. If it's the first time you've listened, obviously, I cannot wait for October when Doctor Strange comes out. There will be absolutely no way I can hide that.
Absolutely.
I actually thought this was the perfect opportunity
to
further introduce Doctor Strange to a wider audience by setting him up in one of the post-credit scenes. That's what I thought.
Yeah, no,
I didn't.
I totally understand, but can I just say, if you were a first-time listener to our podcast and haven't heard John talk about Doctor Strange, pop on over to YouTube. We did a 31-minute review of the 2-minute teaser trailer for Doctor Strange. I'm sure we're going to be talking about Doctor Strange right the way up to its release date in 28th of October over here. But I can see what you mean. It is the next Marvel Cinematic Universe movie coming up.
However, in thinking it through, I have kind of accepted it now, and actually think it may have been a good idea that they didn't have Doctor Strange. However, at the same time, I still there is a little bit of me that thinks, well, they still could have had Doctor Strange in there, and I'll give you the reasons.
Okay.
The first one is, I don't think Spider-Man needs any setup. He is practically the biggest character in Marvel Comics, or one of them at least.
He is the biggest character in Marvel Comics.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. We all loved him in the movie. He was there in the movie. So he doesn't need that promotion as such.
Okay.
However, of course, you're going to put him in the post-credit scene. So that's fine. Absolutely. And that's why I think if they had just shuffled the deck and put the first post-credit sequence as the end of the film, Tom Holland and Spider-Man with that for the homecoming, or even kept it as the second one, because obviously it did say Spider-Man will return, so that makes a lot of sense. But I didn't feel that, given that's at least 18 months, 2 years away, I think. Isn't it 2017 Homecoming that they're talking about now? Yeah. And he's the biggest character. I don't know whether it needed that promotion, and I would have liked to have seen a Doctor Strange. However, I thought, if you introduce Doctor Strange, how do you do it? Because then you kind of tag the timeline of this new Phase 3 film to one of the Phase 2 characters, I suppose.
Okay.
And it still would have been nice, though, however, to have had something. I just had this vision that they would see the Sanctum Sanctorum, you would go through the window of Vishanti, and there would be Doctor Strange there sat meditating, because he stands above, or away from, I should say, the Civil War. He doesn't get involved.
He sits on his ass.
But as the camera moves forward towards the back of Doctor Strange, towards the bookshelf, that all of a sudden the reality would fade into this other epic battle going on, of nothing in particular, but just showing that there are other things going on as well as Civil War.
Yeah,
I thought that would have been cool, but that would have just dated the film Doctor Strange and may not have worked. But
I think because
I wish they had ultimately done a Doctor Strange thing, but I can accept that they didn't.
Of course, I think my I think my thoughts on it, I suppose, are if we're going to see the origin of Doctor Strange in the film, and we don't know when it's set, if you say that he is Doctor Strange during this time, that means he has been active as Doctor Strange for a few years, potentially, alongside Civil War. Whereas when we go to the movie in October, if it turns out, I have a feeling that this might happen, that actually Stephen Strange became Doctor Strange prior to Iron Man becoming Iron Man. And then it's effectively he is fully powered now when he joins them for the Infinity War. Then maybe that's a reason to keep that under wraps until the Doctor Strange film. But I think they could have done something like brought in Dormammu, a sighting of him, brought in Mads Mikkelsen's unnamed character, a sighting of him.
Exactly.
One of those
something Doctor Strange,
like the way they did with the Collector for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
His brief moment.
Something Doctor Strangey would have been really good. But remember, Winter Soldier, they do say Stephen Strange. They don't say Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme.
Yes, they say Stephen's on the watch list.
Yeah. So it's either that they know he's about to become so powerful, or he already is even then. So, and they're still referring to him as Dr. Stephen Strange. Yeah. So he has popped up in the Marvel universe in dialogue. So it would have been nice for me, but hey, sure. We got a teaser trailer of 2 minutes, so I'm absolutely stoked with that. Definitely.
Absolutely. But I do want to talk really quickly about the Spider-Man, the one we did get, the actual Spider-Man
that was cool.
Post-credit scene. It was great fun. I like the reason why I like it particularly is because you started off in Aunt May's apartment. He was visited by the richest man in the world, a billionaire, comes to your home, takes you away. You come back. So I like the fact that they show the aftermath of what happened, which is a great little gag from Tom Holland, which is you must have got hit pretty hard. Yeah, he was a big guy that hit me. Like he was huge, Aunt May. Love that. And then we see that he gets his little spider, what do you call it, spider spotlight, which looks exactly like something out of the 80s cartoon, I must say. But a nice little touch. Again,
that was cool.
Basically, Tony's still upgrading his suit ongoing. So Tony's going to be involved in Spider-Man Homecoming. We know that's been confirmed that Robert Downey Jr. is going to make his next appearance in Spider-Man Homecoming. So quite cool. I think that's a nice little touch, a good little gag, but it does speak of the next film, and does speak of the next next film and the next bit of the universe.
No, the post credits were really good. Absolutely.
Yeah, there was no shawarma here. There was no.
Maybe they should have done 3 post-credit scenes. Really push the boat out. Phase 3 post credits.
Maybe there was no Mark Ruffalo falling asleep being told the story by Tony Stark. 2 of the ones that I know you particularly disliked.
Shawarma,
but shawarma particularly disliked. But one other note from me, which I just didn't mention, just because we kind of missed it in the fighting discussions that we talked about. But the moment with Tony when he says to Cap, "You're not able to carry that shield. My dad made that shield for you." Heartbreaking moment, wasn't it? Just to bring it all back to Howard. But again, another great Howard moment, which is just to lighten us up towards the end of this, which is as Scott Lang says to Tony, "I was told by my boss Hank Pym, never trust a Stark." And Tony's response to him is, "Who are you?" Which I love. Anyway, overall, I think it's time. Oh, sorry.
No, I've got 2 more notes. Two more notes. I must say, I did laugh. I laughed with Captain America and his guns as he was pulling the helicopter towards the building. He's there. I kind of wondered whether he was going to lift them up and kiss them. I really, really did enjoy that. Absolutely. I thought that was good fun. Even though I suppose he was doing a serious thing, but I was expecting him to kiss his guns, basically.
But Chris Evans did talk about that scene and said it was one of the most painful scenes to shoot because you got to stay in that particular pose tensed for a couple of hours. He said he could hardly walk afterwards.
It's a great scene.
But
great view.
Again, totally great view. But again, I love the fact that the helicopter crashes over his head and it looks really dangerous, doesn't it? It looks like he's about to get hurt pretty badly there. But yeah, really enjoyed that.
And then my final note is Kerry Condon as Friday.
Of course we did.
Yeah, like she was introduced in Age of Ultron as the new voice of Jarvis, and I loved again just the vernacular of Irish Friday with "Yes, boss," and your suit's knackered. I mean, really, really good.
Yeah.
And so it was great to have Friday back, played by or voiced by Kerry Condon. Really cool.
Any of our listeners that joined us for our Age of Ultron podcast will remember our discussions about an Irish voice over for Tony Stark. But yeah, your repulsors are knackered, boss.
Yeah, was hilarious. Quality.
Really, really good.
And actually, I've got one final one, and that's the continuing alumni of Community. Actually,
yes.
We have Jim Rash, Dean Pelton doing his cameo there from Greendale College. I love the fact that he goes from being the dean of Greendale College to essentially the dean of MIT. Fantastic. And obviously we had Abed in The Winter Soldier, and obviously the Russo brothers were producers on Community. So that, you know, some of the actors from Community showing up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, fantastic. Dean Pelton obviously being one of my favorites. So it was really good to have him.
So we've got our notes, we've got our points done. We always end off our episodes with one question. John, do you defend Captain America: Civil War?
I do defend.
Really?
I really do defend Captain America: Civil War. I absolutely give this 4.5 Spider-Man or Spider-Men even out of 5. I just thought, for me, this is the best Marvel trilogy to date. I love a lot of the other films, but this was just really, really cool. I felt that it really pulled the threads through of Peggy, of Howard, all the way through, and obviously for Bucky Barnes as well. It really made it meaningful. We had a great introduction of the Black Panther, T'Challa. We had Ant-Man going from small to giant size, and Paul Rudd being fantastic. I loved the main antagonist here, which was Zemo, but just the fact that as well, in addition to that, it was the Avengers. The Avengers were the antagonists, and it just set up so well. It's a nice thread from Age of Ultron as well. So this to me was really good. I just found it really good, and ultimately I would have come down on Team Romanoff. I would have been with the Black Widow, probably on the side of Iron Man, but absolutely realizing that Team Cap was also my friends, and I would want to at least give them the benefit of the doubt and try and protect them and stop them from getting arrested as much as possible. So Team Romanoff.
Right.
I never thought I'd say it, but Team Romanoff.
Absolutely.
Derek, do you defend Captain America's Civil War?
You know what? I've been going back and forth on whether this is the best Marvel Cinematic film or is that Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier blew me away. I'm a huge Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan. I'm a huge fan of the idea of Hydra. Huge fan of a book called Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D. And The Winter Soldier was that book brought to life, and extra pacing added, extra characters added. And this movie is Civil War done so well. They've treated each of the characters so well. I know I'm going to watch this another 5, 6, 10 times and love every moment of it. I know I am. So I'm still tossing up whether I'll like this as our number 1 film or number 2, but it is right up there in my top 2 films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So do I defend it? I absolutely defend it. A couple of tiny little things that we forgot to talk about, obviously, stuff like the Vision and Scarlet Witch, who are partners in the comic books. They have their moment when they're sitting around and cooking dinner for each other, which is really cool. Nice little moments. All of the characters get a moment, and it's the best performance from Chris Evans that we've seen in these films. And I love Chris Evans. It's the best performance that we've seen from Robert Downey Jr., and I love Robert Downey Jr. What more can you ask for in a film? I can't imagine getting anything better from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So yes, absolutely I defend. And I think with that, it's time to close out our podcast. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
listening. Thanks so much for joining. You can rewatch the podcast over on YouTube. Just
Absolutely.
go to YouTube, search for Defenders TV Podcast. You can subscribe to our podcast, our audio podcast. We're at episode 9 of Daredevil, which should be released tomorrow. Just subscribe over on iTunes. If you're an iTunes fan, search for Defenders TV Podcast or go to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Or you can come and join us on any other good or evil or Team Cap or Team Iron Man podcast catcher and search for Defenders TV Podcast. You can come and join us for any of our thoughts on Daredevil.
Exactly. And in addition, come and join our Facebook group. Go to facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast. Get involved, leave some discussion, comment with other members of the group. Provide comments, and of course you can join us on Twitter at DefendersCast as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been fantastic, good fun. Thanks, John.
Yeah, really good fun. Again, our third foray now into the world of YouTube. So we're still experimenting, but it's been great fun. Again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening. For if you listen to the podcast, we will be back next time with episode 9 of Daredevil.
And just as an added extra, John, you have to show your t-shirt. You have to stand up and show your t-shirt.
No. I can't even.
You're stuck.
It's Team Iron Fist.
Gotta be the Iron Fist. And you see mine is Team Shield and Team Hydra. So yes, so there you go. That's our closeout for the podcast this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again with Daredevil very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.